In 1969, a mild-mannered Canadian literature professor landed at an airport, made a joke to a colleague about picking up his LLD.
Which is an honorary doctoral laws degree, right?
Exactly, yeah. But the customs agents overheard him, and they thought he said LSD.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So he gets promptly dragged into a back room. They completely tore through his luggage, grilled him about his ties to counterculture figures like, Timothy Leary.
Just intense interrogation.
Right. They demanded to know where he was hiding his stash, but the irony. When he finally got out of that room, he essentially told the world that the agents were actually onto something.
Just not in the way they thought.
Exactly. The drug wasn't in his suitcase. The drug was the television set they went home to watch every night. Welcome to today's deep dive. We are exploring a really fascinating biography and intellectual synthesis by Grant and Havers called The Medium is Still the Message, Marshall McLuhan for Our Time.
It is such a remarkable look at arguably the most famous philosopher of media of the 20th century. Havers builds a very strong case that McLuhan's theories, and especially his warnings, are actually far more applicable with our current digital landscape than they were when he first published them in the 1960s.
Okay, let's unpack this, because after that airport incident, McLuhan recounted the story in an interview and dropped just a brilliant observation.
He really did.
He joked that given the dismal state of modern education, possessing an honorary law degree actually should be a felony.
Classic McLuhan.
Right. But then he pivoted to a much heavier point. He argued that electric media itself operates as a narcotic. He literally called the modern media environment a drugless inner trip that fundamentally numbs the people consuming it.
And that concept forms the baseline of what we are examining today. We tend to think of media as just neutral tools.
Like you pick up a hammer, drive a nail, you put it down.
Right. You pick up a phone to send a message, you put it down. But McLuhan argued the exact opposite. Media are not tools. They are entirely new environments that encompass us and alter our sensory balance.
Yeah.
So our goal today is to help you step outside your own electric cave, to finally see the invisible water that you and, honestly, all of us have been swimming in every day.
But that creates a massive paradox, doesn't it? Like, if we are swimming in this narcotic environment, why don't we notice the side effects?
Well, that's the big question.
If you drink 4 cups of coffee, your hands shake. You feel the caffeine. Yet we stare at glowing screens for 12 hours a day and consider it perfectly normal. What is keeping us from recognizing the impact?
To answer that, we have to look at McLuhan's most legendary and frequently misinterpreted phrase. The medium is the message.
Right. Everyone knows that quote, but few people really get it.
Exactly. To really grasp what he meant by that, we have to look at how he defined media in the first place. He didn't just mean newspapers or television programs. He defined media as extensions of the human physical body and nervous system.
So a technology is just a physical upgrade to our biology.
Precisely. A stone axe extends the power of the hand. The wheel extends the mobility of the foot. The microscope extends the range of the eye.
Makes sense.
And in the electric age, the computer extends the central nervous system and the brain, processing and storing vast amounts of data that our biological memory could just never hold.
So it's kind of like walking into a casino. We sit down at a table and obsess over whether we are winning or losing at blackjack. We focus on the cards, that's the content.
Yeah.
But the real message is the casino itself. There are no clocks on the walls, there are no windows, the drinks are free, and the lights are constantly flashing.
Right. The environment is engineered to fundamentally change your behavior and your sense of time, regardless of what cards you are dealt. What's fascinating here is how perfectly that translates to the text analysis.
How so?
Well, Jonathan Haidt, a social psychologist, referenced in the exploration of McLuhan's work, uses a very similar framing. He says the content of any medium is merely the juicy piece of meat carried by the burglar to distract the watchdog of the mind.
Oh, I love that analogy. The watchdog is our conscious attention.
Exactly.
We are barking at the meat, the viral videos, the political opinions, the news articles, while completely ignoring the burglar. And the burglar is the medium itself, sneaking into our house and rearranging all the furniture while we aren't looking.
And when you apply that to modern technology hearings, it clarifies the entire dynamic. Yeah. Consider when executives like Mark Zuckerberg testify before legislative bodies.
Right.
The promise is almost always about content moderation, hiring thousands of people to remove toxic posts or filtering out dangerous trends to protect younger users. The focus is entirely on managing the juicy meat.
Because from a McLuhan perspective, removing a toxic post doesn't actually solve the core structural issue.
No, not at all.
The actual medium, the phone-based, instantaneous, perpetually engaging nature of the platform itself, is the burglar. The medium is prematurely exposing younger users to the totality of the adult world, bombarding their nervous systems with an infinite scroll of global data.
Which is a huge structural shift.
Yeah, that structural change to childhood happens regardless of whether they are looking at a harmful post or a perfectly innocuous dancing video. The environment of a phone-based existence is the message.
Exactly.
But let me throw a wrench in that, though. If I spend 2 hours reading a deeply researched, rigorous article about the American Civil War, does that have the exact same neurological impact on me as spending 2 hours scrolling through viral fashion trends? Does the actual substance of what we say no longer matter?
Well, it matters on a semantic level. McLuhan never claimed that content is completely irrelevant to human discourse, but he argued that content is always subordinate to the invisible environment the medium creates. Whether you are scrolling through 19th century history or modern fashion, the medium is still bombarding your central nervous system with an all-at-onceness that biological humans were never designed to handle.
The format itself is the overload.
Right. The sensory impact, the isolation of staring at a screen, the rapid pacing, that underlying mechanism remains identical. The meat changes, but the burglar is the exact same burglar.
So if the burglar is actively restructuring society and our minds, what is it about human biology that makes us so blind to the break-in? Why is the watchdog so easily distracted in the first place?
We are dealing with a severe biological bottleneck.
Yeah.
We simply do not have the evolutionary wiring for this level of rapid saturating change.
We're just not built for it.
No. McLuhan pointed out that the structure of our nerves in our brain stems specifically the diencephalon, which handles our most basic survival instincts and autonomic functions, finished evolving before humanity even discovered fire.
Wait, before fire, that really puts things in perspective.
Right.
The hardware processing all this data is effectively still living in a cave, but we are holding supercomputers in our pockets.
Exactly. When a primal brain is confronted with the electric age, with instantaneous global information hitting it from all sides simultaneously, it gets cognitively overwhelmed.
It just shuts down.
Essentially, yeah. The brain numbs itself to cope with the overload.
Mm-hmm.
It acts as a biological defense mechanism against a highly traumatic sensory environment.
So what does this all mean for how we actually process the world? I mean, we still have to make daily decisions, govern societies, and educate the next generation. If we are walking around in a numbed-out state of sensory overload, how do we function?
McLuhan argued that we cope through what he termed rearview mirror thinking.
Rearview mirror thinking.
Yeah. Because the present environment is too overwhelming and entirely invisible to us while we are fully immersed in it, we can only consciously perceive an environment after it has passed into history. We constantly judge our present reality through the lens of the past.
Oh, so like the Renaissance was essentially a society looking back at the Middle Ages in its rearview mirror.
Yes, exactly.
Then the Industrial Revolution looked back at the Renaissance. We are always one step behind our own inventions.
A great way to understand the mechanics of this is to look at how previous media changed our brains. When the printing press was invented, it fundamentally restructured human thought to be linear.
Right. Reading left to right.
Yeah. You read one word after another, building logical arguments sequentially. That became the dominant way humans process the world. But electric media doesn't work like that.
It's totally fragmented.
Electric media is nonlinear. It's a barrage of notifications, flashes of imagery, and hyperconnected nodes operating all at once. Yet we still try to apply our old linear print-based logic to this nonlinear electric environment.
We see this play out today when institutions try to solve digital problems with analog solutions. Think about the current movement to ban smartphones in school classrooms.
Oh, perfect example.
Educators are imposing this physical analog boundary years, sometimes a decade, after the psychological addiction has already taken root in an entire generation of students.
It's too late.
Yeah. We only clearly perceived the damage of the smartphone environment once it had already become our permanent reality. It's a textbook rearview mirror reaction.
And this connects directly to a paradox McLuhan spent a lot of time analyzing. The paradox of unintended effects. Technologies never do just what they're designed to do.
They always have side effects.
Always. When Henry Ford invented the mass-produced automobile, his stated intention was to help everyday people by making transportation accessible. But the unintended effect was that the automobile systematically dismantled the traditional, slow-paced rural way of life that Ford himself deeply cherished.
It paved over the very world he loved.
It did. But McLuhan cautioned against falling into simple moral panics or binary ethical judgments, because that same automobile, which destroyed rural tranquility, also inadvertently acted as a massive social leveler.
How so?
It broke down physical and geographical distances that had been enforced for generations, which in turn improved race relations in the American South by increasing mobility and economic opportunity. Media are make-happen agents. They are not make-aware agents.
They force massive societal shifts long before they grant us the wisdom to understand what is actually happening.
Exactly.
But if our brains are biologically hardwired to miss the present, and if human history is just a continuous series of rear-view mirrors, how did one Canadian literature professor manage to see the media environment so clearly? How did he bypass his own biological bottleneck?
It really comes down to the friction between his deeply traditional background and the modern reality he found himself teaching in. McLuhan was not a technologist.
Right, he was an English professor.
He was a scholar of classics and English literature. He was steeped in the medieval trivium grammar, rhetoric, and logic. He was a devout Catholic who favored conservative writers like G.K. Chesterton.
He was a man of the printed word, through and through.
Absolutely.
But then, in the 1930s, he takes a job teaching at the University of Wisconsin, and he realizes his students are completely baffled by the classic texts. The linear, print-based logic he values just isn't connecting with the generation raised on radio and cinema.
So instead of just complaining about the youth of today, he adapts his entire approach.
Which is so rare.
He brings comic strips, pulp fiction, and magazine advertisements into the university classroom. He uses them as raw material to teach communication and culture.
It's incredible. The man who would eventually warn the entire world about the spiritual emptiness of mass media had to use mass media to teach his students because he realized the media were the real educators. The textbooks were just the rearview mirror.
He recognized that you couldn't break through that biological numbness with a traditional logical lecture. The linear approach wouldn't work on nonlinear minds, so he developed a method of communication based on probes and put-ons.
And the probe isn't a stated fact, it's a provocation, right?
Exactly. He utilized puns, jokes, and wild, sometimes contradictory aphorisms. He wasn't trying to hand down a fixed, elitist truth from on high. He was trying to provoke active thought. He wanted to jolt people out of their sleepwalking state.
And he even brought this method into the corporate world. He collaborated on a newsletter called the Do Line.
Oh, I love the Do Line project.
Yeah, it was named after the distant early warning radar system built in the Arctic to look out for incoming Soviet missiles. But instead of missiles, McLuhan was warning business executives about incoming technological effects.
It's such a brilliant framing.
And the newsletter included a deck of cards that functioned like a corporate magic 8-ball. An executive facing a complex structural problem would pull a random card, read some cryptic McLuhan phrase, and use the sheer friction of that thought to completely rethink their assumptions.
That kind of unconventional brilliance turned him into a massive global celebrity in the 1960s. The French even coined a word for his specific brand of cultural influence, McLuhanism.
Whoa.
He was interacting with John Lennon, appearing on the cover of Newsweek, and doing cameos in films like Woody Allen's Annie Hall.
That scene in Annie Hall is iconic. He literally steps out from behind a movie theater poster to tell a pretentious, loudmouthed academic, "You know nothing of my work. You mean my whole fallacy is wrong."
It's hilarious. But that level of pop culture fame carried a heavy cost. Traditional academics utterly despised him.
Really?
Oh, yeah. They hated his lack of linear logic, his reliance on pop culture, and his refusal to explicitly condemn media on moral grounds. Historians and literary critics branded him an enemy of society and dismissed him as an anti-intellectual.
Which is just a wild accusation to hurl at a scholar with a PhD from Cambridge.
Totally.
It clearly weighed on him, though. He once wrote to a friend that he felt like a man who had pulled a fire alarm to save a burning building, only to be arrested and accused of being the arsonist.
That captures his isolation perfectly. He saw the environment changing, tried to warn everyone, and was blamed for the fire.
So if McLuhan pulled the fire alarm, what is our escape route? We spent a lot of time diagnosing the problem. The burglar rearranging the house, the numbed brainstem, the rearview mirror blind spots. How do we actually survive the fire?
This is where McLuhan separates himself from a lot of modern technological fatalism. Today, you often hear leaders in the tech industry, like OpenAI's Sam Altman, state that there is no magic red button to stop artificial intelligence.
Right.
There is a prevailing sense that technology is an unstoppable force of nature that we just have to weather.
Here's where it gets really interesting. McLuhan explicitly rejected that kind of fatalism. He said, "I don't choose just to sit and let the juggernaut roll over me."
Yes.
His entire project was about studying the juggernaut so that we know exactly where to find the off button.
And his ultimate tool for finding that off button was pattern recognition. He illustrated this using a striking literary metaphor from Edgar Allan Poe's short story, A Descent into the Maelstrom.
Oh, the story about the giant ocean whirlpool.
Exactly. In that story, a sailor and his brothers are caught in a massive, deadly vortex. His brothers panic, they fight the current, and they are quickly pulled down to their deaths.
Right.
But the surviving sailor takes a different approach. He forces himself to detach emotionally and simply study the vortex. By observing the environment, he recognizes patterns in how debris is moving through the water. He realizes that cylindrical objects are pulled down significantly slower than other shapes.
So what does he do?
He lashes himself to a cylindrical water barrel, abandons ship, and survives.
He didn't overpower the whirlpool. He understood its mechanics. So how do we translate lashing ourselves to a barrel into our daily digital lives?
McLuhan argued that we have to change our focal point. You have to stop looking at the figure and start looking at the ground.
The figure being the shiny new device, the latest app, or the new AI model. The juicy meat, basically.
Right. The figure is obvious. It's what demands our attention. The ground is the hidden environment. It's the social changes, the increased isolation, the structural shifts in how we relate to our neighbors and our families that the new device quietly facilitates.
So to survive the technological maelstrom, you have to study the ground.
Yes. And this raises an important question about how we've been trained to process information. Western society relies heavily on the left hemisphere of the brain-objective, linear logic, cause and effect.
Sure.
But McLuhan believed that linear logic alone is simply too slow to catch up with the speed of electric media. We must blend that logic with the right hemisphere intuitive creativity. We have to intuitively grasp the paradoxical, non-linear effects of a technology before they fully manifest. We have to anticipate the unintended consequences.
So we need the rigorous logic of a scientist to measure the tool, but the intuition of an artist to feel the shape of the environment it is creating.
Exactly. We can't just analyze the technology. We have to perceive the structural change.
So what does this mean for us today? The massive value you can take away from McLuhan's work is that you no longer have to be the fish unaware of the water.
Right.
The next time you pick up your phone or create an account on a new platform, try to look past the juicy meat of the content. Look at the invisible environment it's creating in your home and your community. By focusing on the ground instead of the figure, you can actually begin to find the off button in your own life.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, Havers reminds us that history isn't just some natural force that happens to us. We make history through the media we create.
Yeah, that's a great point.
But the great paradox is that our media then turn around and remake us. If we don't actively study these patterns, if we just blindly accept every new upgrade without questioning the environment it brings with it, we become slaves to our own creations.
And that leads to one final, deeply unsettling concept from the book for you to mull over. It's an idea of McLuhan called the discarnate identity.
This one is chilling.
It really is. In our electric age, we increasingly attempt to live as pure data. We create digital avatars, we socialize in virtual spaces, and we try to leave our physical, natural bodies behind, acting as though we have godlike spiritual power over our digital reality.
It is an illusion of transcendence.
And McLuhan warned that this illusion, it doesn't make us more enlightened. In fact, it might actually intensify the violence of our primal tribal instincts.
Which is so counterintuitive to how tech was sold to us.
Right. When we exist entirely online, without physical bodies sharing physical space, empathy disappears. We lose the basic humanity that comes from eye contact and physical presence. When we view others merely as anonymous data points on a screen, it strips away our social inhibitions and triggers tribal mob mentalities. The less physically connected we are, the more vicious we become.
When we forget we have bodies, we lose the very friction that keeps us human.
So tonight, when you are looking at your screen, ask yourself, are you extending your humanity or are you trying to leave your body behind? Are you acting as the watchdog or are you just staring at the meat? Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Stay curious, keep studying the maelstrom, and we'll see you next time.